If you'd like to learn how to turn this into something like this, then keep watching and I'll show you exactly how to create your own leaderboard in your project. Welcome to Roblox Snippets. In this video, I'll show you how to create your own leaderboard, disable the default leaderboard up in the right corner, also change how your GUI looks and add it into your project at the very end. So to get started, we'll create some stats and I'll show you why you should do this. So come over to Service, Script Service and click on plus and we'll add a script. And we'll change the name of this to be our main script. And then over in the main script, we'll get rid of Hello World and add some code. So we'll go game.players.player added. And we want to connect a function to this and pass in a player. So this script gets loaded for each player that joins the game. So all of this runs for each player. Now inside of here, we'll create our standard default leader stats folder. So local leader stats will equal instance.new, and it will be a folder. And just outside, add a comma, and we will parent this to the player. And we'll give leader stats.name will be equal to leader stats. Right, so these two lines form a base of Roblox default behavior for the GUI that pops up in the right-hand corner when you play a game. And this particular word in here needs to be exactly like this. So leader stats, all lowercase, no capitals. You could change this over here to say whatever you like, player stats or whatever. However, this needs to be like this in order for it to work correctly with the default. Although we are going to disable it, but we're going to do a bit of an experiment to start with. So we're going to create some variables in here to show on the screen. So the first one we'll call player gold, and it will be instance.new, and it'll be a number value. And we will parent this to the leader stats folder. So it will get stored inside of the folder. We'll give player gold a name, which will be gold, and this will be what you will see on the screen. And below this, player gold dot value equals 0. Alright, so if I give this a test, you don't have to, but if you want to check your code, alright, you will see that the leader stats has come up with my character name, gold, and the value over here. So this is the standard leader stats display. Alright, so if yours is all working, then click on stop. And we'll come back to our main script. Now inside of here, I'd like you to create another 4 stats. You can call them whatever you like or follow along with me. But so we have a total of 5. Alright, through the magic of video, here are my 5 stats. So I've created gold, gems, boxes, level, and rings. They're all number values and they'll all show up in the leader stats. So let's test that now by playing and see what happens. Right, now if you did yours exactly the same as mine, you'll notice over here we have gold, gems, boxes, level, and then one is missing at the end. And this is the problem with the default leader stats once you start adding too many. Now, if you had have used names up here that were a little bit shorter, you may get the 5 on the screen, but at some point, if you continue to add them, they will just go off the edge of the screen. So in my main script, rings is missing up here, which is no good for us. Right, so we'll stop that there and we'll get on with showing you how to set up a GUI. Alright, to create our screen GUI, we're going to come over to this folder over here called Starter GUI. And if you left click on that and then click on the plus, if you don't see Screen GUI pop up in here, click in the search box and start typing Screen, alright, until you see Screen GUI and then left click on it. Now you won't see anything happen just yet because this acts as a container to hold anything that we want to put on the screen. And it's going to hold everything that we want to show on the screen for the game. So for that reason, let's change its name to be the Game GUI. Right, now in the Game GUI, if we want to divide our screen up, so we might have different GUIs or things we want to display, we use a thing called frames. So click on the game GUI and then click on the plus, and we want to find frame. So once again, if you don't see it, start typing frame in the search box and then add it in. And you should see a white square appear in the top left hand corner of the screen. We'll change the name of this frame to be our game frame. Right, now this is going to hold everything inside of our GUI, so we want to make it the same size as our screen. So we'll come down into its properties, and I'll just scroll up here a bit. Scroll right down till we find the size. Now if you're working with different devices, we can use a thing called scale, and what that does is if the screen is smaller, it'll scale it down. If it's bigger, it will scale it up. And we're going to use that in here because it's very useful to keep everything in proportion. So under size, you'll notice that the defaults are offset of 100 and 100. We're going to change the offset to 0 and it will shrink our box. But in the scale, we're going to put 1. Now, the scale represents between 0 and 1 the full width of the screen. And it's the same for our Y value. So if we change the offset to 0 and then the Y scale to 1, it should fill up your whole screen like this. Now at the moment we can't see anything, so if we scroll back up to the top and set the background transparency now to 1, then we have this invisible frame in here that's going to hold any other GUI elements inside of it. Right, now we have our main game frame. Let's create one for our stats. So click on the game frame and then the plus, and we're going to add another frame. And this one, we're going to call this our stats frame. Alright, so once again we get this white square up in the corner. Now, for the purposes of the video, we're going to, and for me to show you a couple of things about the basics of GUIs, there's lots of things you can do, but we'll just cover the basics for manipulating them and getting them to sit where you want them to sit. So we're going to move it to the middle of our screen. So if we come down to our position for our stats frame and we expand this. Now, as I said, from this side to this side is 1, so halfway is 0.5. Alright, so we'll change our X to be 0.5 halfway across the screen, and we'll change our Y to be 0.5, which is halfway down the screen. Now you might think, well, that doesn't really look in the middle, and that is because if you look carefully at this little corner here, this is the anchor point for our frame at the moment, which is in this top left hand corner. So we want to move it into the middle of this frame, and to do that, if we scroll right back up to the top of our, or near the top of our stats frame in the properties, you'll find anchor points here. So just expand that, and we're going to change this to be 0.5 for X and 0.5 for Y. And that now puts our anchor point right in the middle and puts our stats frame right in the middle here as well. Now initially we'll make our frame a bit bigger, so if we scroll down to its size now, once again we've got these scales. So let's keep everything consistent and we'll change the offset to 0, the scale for X to be 0.5, and we'll change for Y the offset to 0 and the scale to be 0.5. Right, and we get this nice white box sitting right in the middle of the screen. So don't worry about the colors or anything just at the moment. We'll get to that. All right, now we might make the background color. We'll do something with the color. So let's come back up while we're here, and let's change the background color to be black. So find background color 3 and left click, and you'll get this color wheel come up over here. And I'll just move it into the middle of the screen. And if we just slide this right over to the right and click OK, we'll change the background color. Now we'll also put a border around our frame. So just below where you did the color, change the border pixel size to say 2. And we won't see it unless we change the color. So border color 3, let's click on that and I'll move the slider over here, and I'll make mine a blue. You can make it whatever color you like, and click on OK, and you'll see that I have a nice blue border around our frame. Now that we have that looking a little bit better, we want to display some information in here. So while you're clicked on the stats frame, click on the plus, and we're going to add a text label. So if you don't see that, start typing text until you see text label, and then left click to add it in. Now this label is sitting within this frame, okay, and it's in the top left hand corner. So what we want to do is make it stretch right across. So if we click on the text label and then come down to its size properties, we'll expand its X and Y, and we're going to change its X offset to 0 once again, and let's make this scale 1. Now you'll notice that whatever the container of whatever it is you're changing, the scale is for its parent. So 1 is completely across this frame. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. So we've got this right across. Let's change the Y from 0, set its offset, and let's make its Y value a scale of 0.2. Okay, so remember I said we have 5 values, so 0.2 times 5 will make them fit nicely inside of this box. Now currently this is sitting just inside of the border, but if you wanted this label to have its own border and its own color, etc., you can come up to the top once again, and let's change its I'll change its background color to the same color as the border, so or roughly over here, and we're going to give this label its own border as well. Now if you want it to, so it doesn't overlap with the other one, come down, change the border pixel size to 2, and we might, so it stands out a bit, we'll change the border color, say just move it over so that it's just white. And you'll see this border mode. So at the moment, outline, if you have a look, it overlays this stats frame border. So if you don't like the look of that, then you can come down and change the border mode to, instead of outline, to be inset. And now you'll see that it sits just inside of our stats. All right, and you can play around with this to get it looking much better if you wish. All right, so now I might actually just turn that off just to make it clearer. So I'll just set the pixel size back to 0. And no, actually we'll leave it on. But we might make we'll make it 2, and it'll be inset. But instead of the border color, I'm going to make it the same. I'll make it a black. That way it should put a border around the edge. All right. Sorry about that. Just being a bit picky. Now, our text is not really standing out at the moment. So on our text label, let's scroll right down to near the bottom, and you will see under fonts, we have a few options in here. So the first thing we'll do is change our text color. So if we left click on text color 3, and we'll just move it across and make it white. And then just below that, if you click on text scaled, it will make the text as big as it can be to fit inside this box at the moment. All right, now that's probably set up our text label fairly well. Now the next thing is that we want to represent 5 of these evenly down here. Now I could duplicate this. If I go ahead and duplicate, you'll see that the next text label just sits where it is, and I have to go through and do the positioning. However, there is a special element with GUIs that lets us create a list. So if we come over to the stats frame and click on plus, inside of the search box, start typing UI, and under here you'll find a thing called UI list layout. Go ahead and left click on that, and you'll notice that it moves my labels perfectly in order down the screen. And we want 5 of these, so go ahead and duplicate them another couple of times, So we've got 4, and then duplicate again, and then we have our 5 labels down the screen. Now they're going to represent these things in here that we created earlier, so gold, gems, boxes, etc. So let's change the name of each of these labels to represent the thing that they're going to show. So the first one will be our gold, and then our text label, next text label down, we'll make to be gems, and then next one will be the boxes label, and the next one down will be the level, and the last one will be rings. So you'll see nothing's changed in here because we need to change the text inside each of our labels. So if we click on gold and then scroll down to where we were working on the text near the bottom, you'll find a property there, text. Click in that and change it to be the name of what it represents, and it'll change on the screen. So gold, and then the next one down will be gems, and then next one will be boxes, next one will be level, and the last one will be rings. Okay, so now we have all of these labels being represented. Now this is far too big, and we may not want these to be in the middle. So if you want to change the properties of all of your text labels, you can click on the first one and then hold down Shift and click on the last one so they're all selected, and then scroll down through the properties down below where we were working on the text, and you will find a text X alignment, and currently it's set to center. So let's change that to be to the left over here. All right, and we can click off this. And now our frame is way too big, so we can change our frame. If we click on our stats frame, come down to its size, and we're going to change its X value. So let's change it to say 0.2, and even that's probably a little bit too big, so perhaps 0.15, and that's getting closer to what we would like to see. It's probably even a little bit big. I think 1 will be probably too small. Let's go 0.12. We'll leave it at 5 for now. Alright, it all depends on what you want to display inside of here, so or how long the numbers are, or whatever it is, the information. But this should work fairly well for us to get started with. And I'll show you how to move these off the edge very shortly, now that we have our game GUI set up and ready to use. Alright, now that we have our GUI, let's understand how it works. The first thing to understand is, over here, the starter GUI, when you run the game, changes its name to become the player GUI. So if you come up and click on play, you'll notice that if we come over into the workspace and we expand players, and then my character, you will have down here an item called player GUI. And if we expand that, you'll see we have our game GUI, which has become a part of the player. All right. So it's an important thing to understand when you're writing your code is when you're writing your code, you're referring to the player GUI, not the starter GUI. The other thing you'll notice is we've still got our leader stats up here, which we will get rid of shortly, and make that disappear, and then we will update these items over here. So let's stop that there. Right, we're going to work on the server side to update these labels, etc. And if you wanted to use local scripts, then that's a separate sort of video, because if you change value on a client, you then need to use a remote event to send through the change to the server to let these update correctly. So I have other videos on remote events, functions, and client server. So I recommend, if you don't quite understand that, to read it before, or watch the video, sorry, before you try to create your own project with local scripts. All right, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to do everything inside of our main script to change our GUI. So open up your main script, and I'll get rid of these windows here for the time being. And you should find we've got all of our stats in here. Now, just below the last one, if you drop down a couple of lines, and I'll make this a bit bigger, we're going to get a hold of that player GUI that I just showed you on the screen by creating a variable. So we'll say local player GUI will be equal to, and we're going to say player. So the player is loading into the game, and we need to wait for child for the player GUI. All right, so make sure it's typed with the capital P and the G, and we're waiting for the GUI because this script has only just finished running and it may not have had time yet to load this into the game. So we say wait to make sure that it's loaded before anything else happens. And then below this, now that we have our player GUI, and if I bring up my Explorer window, which is Starter GUI, remember it's changed the name, now we want to get a hold of our game GUI. So we'll say local game GUI will be equal to player GUI, and we will once again say wait for child game GUI. So it needs to be spelt exactly the same as whatever you changed it to, so make sure the spelling is correct or it won't find it. Now the game GUI is probably the game GUI is the main thing that will load, and we can try, after we've waited for child here, to put in a dot at the end and type game frame, which will move us down to here, and then we'll move down to the stats frame. So dot stats frame. Now, if for some reason you get an error that it can't find these things, then you could create another variable down here, or put another wait for child in here to make sure that everything has loaded. All right, so sometimes if it still hasn't loaded, then you will get an error saying that this is nil, but it shouldn't cause any problems here. So now we have our game GUI with these frames. We're now referring to everything inside of here, and we want to create a variable for each of these things so we can update it. So just below here, we'll say player gold label will equal, and it will be in the game GUI, and then it will be the name of each label over here. So gold label, and then local player gems label will equal game GUI dot gems label, etc. So I'll pause the video and do the rest. So now once we have all of our labels, we can go ahead and make changes to each of the texts inside of them when the game loads. Now, when it does load, say you have data stores and these values have changed, so level 2, 6 rings, etc. You would write the following lines that we're going to do. So you could say use inside of data stores when you load the game. And that will update immediately all of the labels so it shows any saved progress for your players. And we do that by getting our gold label for a start. And the property that we want to change is text, so dot text with a capital T equals. And now inside of here, remember I said you wanted to put a space. So we start with a space inside of these inverted commas and type gold, and then a colon and another space. And then we're going to use 2 dots, and it's called concatenation, and it will join the next string onto this. We want to take the number value of gold, which is up the top here, okay, gold, and it's a number value, but we want to change it to a string. So we say to string, and the player gold dot value is the thing that we want to get. So we'll join this together, and it will just look like gold equals, or gold 0 at the end. And once again, we're going to do this for each of these. So I'll pause the video and do the rest of mine. Right, I've added mine all in, and as you can see, they're all the same. They're all number values being converted to strings. Now, when the game is running, we want to change these values whenever these values up here change. So if a player picks up some gold, we want to immediately put it into this label. And we can create a number of events down here that will handle that for us. So I'll do the first one, which will be player gold and dot changed. So this refers to when a value changes, which will be the player gold up above, and we want to connect a function to this. So just move outside so it looks like that. And we basically just want to do exactly what is up the top here. So we take a copy of our gold and move it inside of here. And then once again, we want to repeat this process for all the others. So I'll pause and do that. I'll come back to you. Okay, so I've added all of these in. Now you might think, this is a lot of work. And I suppose it is a little bit fiddly. And there are slightly better ways to do it, but it's important to understand the process that your data goes through to get set up. And once you have done this, you don't have to think about it again in other scripts. You can simply change a value up here like boxes, and your GUI looks after everything else because we've already done this coding. So currently if we run the game like this, you'll only see these changes with zeros and there's no data being changed. So we're going to write a test loop right at the very bottom down here. So I'll move down just below where we changed the rings and I'll zoom in a little bit. And we'll call this our testing loop. And we're simply going to put in here, change the values up the top. So we'll say while task.wait of say every second. We're going to change player gold dot value, and we'll add plus equals 1, and we'll just change each of these by a different amount. So gems dot value, we'll say plus equals 2, and player boxes dot value plus equals 3, and player level dot value value plus equals 4, and player rings dot value plus equals 5. Alright, so when we run this script, then these should start updating every second, and you should see it on the screen. So before we do that, just come up to View and over to Output to make sure we see if we get any errors, and we will click on Play. Alright, if all has gone to plan, you will notice that we have our GUI updating, and we've got a space over on the edge here. We've got all of our figures updating immediately, and we still have this old GUI, but notice rings is not visible, so we can't see it off the edge of the screen. But our GUI that we've created is all working. All right, so if everything is working the way it should be, then we can stop the game, and I will show you how to now remove this old GUI so we just have ours left. Alright, to get rid of this default leaderboard up here is fairly easy. So I'll stop the game running. I just want to show you what we're doing. If you come down to our starter player in the Explorer window and expand it, and then down to starter player scripts, click on the plus, and we're going to add a local script. Right, and we'll call this our disable leaderboard script, or local script. Or you can just leave it as it is, because that's a very long name. Alright, so let's get rid of this line in here. Now what we're going to do is, because we're on the client, we're going to do this for each player. So we'll create a variable for the players service. So players will equal game get service and players. And using that, we'll get a hold of the individual player GUI. So player GUI will equal players, and then dot local player, so it's just on the client machine, and we will wait for child for the player GUI, player GUI to load on the client. All right, so this is just the client representation of what's happening in the game. And we just need one line in here. Now I'll add a comment in here. So disabled the default leaderboard. Just so you remember what this is, and you can save this script for later to add into other projects, because it's quite useful when you want to do this. And you simply put game and then starter GUI dot set core GUI enabled. So make sure you type it correctly, and a set of brackets, and we're going to use the built-in variables, so enum.core GUI type .playerlist, and then add a comma and type false. So this effectively is like a switch that will turn off the default script and let it run. So if you come up and give it a save and let's play. Alright, I got an error and I left this in because you can make easy mistakes like this as well. And just so I can point it out, expected a colon, not a dot, in this line here. So you can see here, this should have been a colon in here. So I'll put a colon in there, and then that should fix that up. So let's try again. Alright, this time we have no errors. Our default leaderboard has disappeared, and we're left with our new GUI that is operating perfectly in the middle of the screen. So I'll stop the game there, and we'll just have a look at how to move this around. Now that you have it working, you probably don't want it right in the middle of your screen. And if you come over to the starter GUI, then you can move your stats frame. So you don't want to move the game frame because it's one big one. However, if you look at its properties down here and come down to its position, just move up a little bit. So come down to its position, then you may want to move it somewhere else. So let's say we wanted it to be in the top right hand corner up here. Then remember that I said scale was 1. Now if you change the scale to be 1 for the frame, my apologies, I'm in the size, not the position. Should be in position. If we change this to be 1, right, it'll go off the edge of the screen. So you want to come back, say point maybe even 9, and play around with those figures until you get it next to the screen. And perhaps if we want to move it up the screen a little bit as well, then we could change this to be, say, 0.3, and that would put it nicely up in the top of the screen. So I hope you got something out of that video, and if you would like to see how I add this into my own main game Obby project that I've been working on and some people have been following along with, then stick around and I will do that. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck adding it into yours, and I will see you in future videos. Alright, if you've stuck around, thank you, and I will show you how to put this into your own project. I'm going to load it into my main game Obby, so if you've been following along making one, then just follow along. We're going to save basically everything that we've done here into a folder, and then we will close this project and open up the your own project or the main game Obby, and we will bring that in. So we'll start down in the starter player scripts. If we left click on the disable leaderboard script, right click on it and then come down to save to file. Right, it should open up a window that will let you save it somewhere on your computer. I have made a resources folder for me to save things into. Now you'll want to change it, if I've already done this once, so if I come over here, you'll notice that I put this prefix on the name when I save it. So starter player service. This lets me know where to put the script when I want to use it again, and then the name of the script after it. Down the bottom here, you'll see it's telling me that it's a Lua script. We don't want to save it as that. You want to click on the drop down and choose RBXM. If you try to import Lua files, it can cause problems, so make sure it's a model file for it to work properly, and click on save. And because I've already done it, I'll just replace the one that's there. And now we want to do the same process with our game GUI, so come up to starter GUI, left click on game GUI, and then right click, come down to save to file. Right, and I have in this case made this starter GUI at the beginning. It's a RBXM model, and then click on save. And the last one, we're going to bring in the main script because we did quite a bit of coding in there and I'll need to change some things. So right click on the main script and click save to file, and I haven't already saved this one, so what I'll do is put the prefix, right, SSS for server script service, change this in the drop down to be an RBXM file, and click on save. Right, and then we've got everything we need from this project, so you can close that and open your project. I'll pause the video and I'll see you shortly. Alright, I've opened up my main game Obby, and we've got quite a few things going on in here. I'm not going to talk about them all because we're talking about the GUI. And we'll start off with the easiest one for a start. We'll come down to the starter player, expand it and choose the starter player scripts. Right click on that, and now we want to choose insert from file. Now that should bring up the same window, otherwise you'll need to find it on your computer. And the one that we're actually interested in here is this one here. So reminding us where to put it. Disable leaderboard and click on open. And that is all we need to do with that, because we don't need to change anything. This will work for all projects, so it's good to save it somewhere and use it if you ever want to disable the leaderboard. Now next we're going to bring in the GUI. So come up to Starter GUI, right click on Starter GUI and come down to Insert from File. We'll come over and click on the GUI to insert and open, and it should appear in your project where we left it in the same position. Alright, so move yours wherever you would like it. And lastly, before we make any changes, is to come up to the server script service. Now I already have a main script in here, and this process is good to go through if you also have a main script and you don't want to have errors. Alright, so the first thing to do if you're going to import the same name is make sure you have all scripts closed up the top here. Then right click and come down and insert from file, and we're going to pick our main script and open. So now you'll see we have two main scripts in here, which can be dangerous because you don't want to change the wrong one or delete the wrong one. Now because this one's highlighted, let's click on it and we'll come down, and I can see straight away that this is the one that I've just imported because it's got everything down the bottom. Now we're going to make use of this, but we don't want it to interfere, and I want to make sure I get rid of the right one. So I'm going to change the name of this to delete. And I'm also going to right click on it and come down and click on disable script. Alright, so even if I run the game now, this will not interfere with my other main script and everything will be okay. So now we've got everything in the game, we can make a couple of changes to adjust for your particular project. So let's open up my main script for a start for the main game Obby that I have here. And I've got quite a few things in here. Most of them are the same, but you'll notice I have a leader stats that I'm displaying, and I'm showing checkpoint, level, boxes, and rings down the bottom here. Right, so there's a couple of changes that need to be made in here in order for this to work. Now I also have data stores that's not running at the moment, but I will, that won't matter to us. We're still going to, just above the data stores, if you have data stores in yours, insert the code from the other script in here to make things work. So if we drop down a couple of lines, I'm going to call this my GUI section, alright, so that I know where I'm working. In case we make any mistakes or things don't work as we expected, then we know anything we did in here is probably causing the problem. Right, and by the way, if you see this error down here, don't worry about that. It's because I've disabled data stores and it doesn't cause any problems. Alright, so now I'll open up my other main script and come down to the bottom, and I've got my variables here. So basically I want to take a copy of everything that is below this, right down to all these changes. We won't worry about the testing loop at the bottom, but I will right click and copy this, then come into my main script, and I'm going to paste that into my GUI section. So you'll notice a bunch of errors come up because I don't have some of these things and I don't need them. Alright, for instance, for a start, I don't have gold in my game. I've only got checkpoint 1, 2, 3, I only have 4 items in my GUI at the moment. So let's change gold for a start to be the checkpoint. So down the bottom, I'm going to change this, even though I haven't changed my GUI yet. I'll say checkpoint label, and this will be checkpoint label. And if I come over here, I can make the changes as I go. So if I open up my GUI that I brought in, the one that we just changed is the gold, so I'm going to change this one to reflect what I've just done here. So checkpoint label. Alright, gems. I don't have gems in here. Okay, so I think I will simply delete gems out of this script altogether. So I'm going to take that out, and anything to do with gems, I'm going to come down here and remove anything to do with gems. Alright, so down here, this whole gems doesn't need to be there. We'll get rid of that. Alright, so we've got gold, and then boxes. Sorry, we're still up the top here. So we've got our checkpoint label, and then boxes, level, rings. So let's see if we've got all of them. Checkpoint, boxes, level, rings. So we've got all of those, so these are correct. Then down the bottom here we can make the changes to reflect what's going on up the top. So just to make sure that these are exactly the same, which they should be because I just copied it across, that should be all good to go. So now I need to change this one here to be checkpoint label. So in actual fact, if I take a copy of this, double click on this and then paste, alright, I can make those changes anywhere the gold label is. So come down and that should cover that. Right, so the next thing is our, over here, the value that we want to change. Up the top here, if we check what I made that to be, player stage is what I called it. So that's what we need to refer to down here. So let's change this to be player stage. And I'll double click that and copy it. And now double click on the player gold to change these so that it reflects that. Alright, and also inside of our label here we want to change this to be checkpoint, and down here also we want to change this to be checkpoint. And the rest of that, we still have a couple of errors in here which is down in the data store, so that's not a problem. But the rest of those should all work just fine. Alright, so now that we have that, I can close this script here and close this one here. And let's click on, we'll bring up the output window just to see if we missed anything or got any errors, and let's see how that works. So we'll say file and save and let's play. Right, and you'll see that my GUI has come up. It's probably a bit low in the screen, so I'll need to play with where it's positioned. And you'll also notice that I didn't delete the text label out over here that I don't need in my GUI. However, while we're in here, let's just jump over and see if I can change my checkpoint, change to 2. And if I jump over boxes, change to 1 there. So everything appears to be working pretty well. Alright, so if I run across, I get more boxes, and I can continue up to here. I didn't die, so I can run out to get my boxes out here. Alright, so everything is working fine there, and I'll stop the game because you didn't want to watch that. And let's just fix up our label over here. So if I delete this label out, now you'll see that now my GUI is probably a little bit too big. So if I come to my stats frame here, if I shrink this up, or even grab this handle here, so you can grab these handles and shrink them, they're going to shrink all the boxes as well, okay, which is probably not what you want to happen. So in that case, you want to change the size of your text boxes. So remember, from the top to the bottom is 1, so each of these, if we select them all and come down to their sizes, currently they are set to 0.2, alright, so if we make them 0.25, then that will fill up 1, so 4 of those, 4 quarters make up 1, and that will make my GUI this size. And then I can resize my frame if I wish to make it a little bit smaller, and everything is working just how I would like it. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos where we'll continue to add obbies and create elements for your game. I'll see you there. If you found this video useful, subscribe now. For more information about my online courses, go to mrbrendanross.com.